Cardano has finally made the list. What do I mean by that? So, have you heard about the Fortune magazine? It actually has a list when it comes to the top innovators in regard to this space. Now, after 150 plus nominations, guess who's one of the 30 that actually made the list? Because there's only 30 in that list. It's none other than Cardano. And I'll talk about the impact of this in today's video, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. But we have to consider, on that list right there, Cardano is one of them, but other things that are included on that list are, for instance, in the case of DBS Bank, which is really massive. Also on top of that, take a look at Gate, one of the most massive exchanges out there, and also something like, for instance, in the case of SBI Holdings, which is based out in Japan, and SBI, they own one of the biggest exchanges in Japan called Bitcoin. So we have to consider this. Cardano making that list, it does give it a lot more validation, in my opinion, because if it was so bad, it wouldn't have been able to do that. Now, granted, people like to say, but isn't it very easy? Well, not really. We think about it, over 150 nominations and only 30 got selected. That means Cardano is viewed as top 30 in that sense. Now, it doesn't mean in terms of the most popular, it doesn't mean in terms of the best of all time. All it means is that, again, when it comes to the Fortune magazine, they have a list for the top innovators when it comes to the space, and Cardano is one of them, which kind of indicates that Cardano is doing revolutionary things. And why would it not be? They had a recent partnership with the Brazilian Olympic Committee. Also, on top of that, there was a statistic not too long ago showcasing how Cardano was impacting over 10,000 farms, which I think is really impressive, showcases even their use case in the case of agriculture. And not to mention as well, Cardano's native token called ADA is now included in the new NASDAQ and CME Group Index futures. So Cardano has been doing a lot of amazing things as of late. Now, people like to say that it's doing really bad because it's at around 17 cents when it comes to ADA. And while I do agree that the price charts aren't looking the best, we have to consider that actually when it comes to the pure fundamentals of Cardano, it's there. And we have to consider this. I think as well, personally in my opinion, Cardano is the best it's ever been doing. Because if I take a look at back in 2021, I didn't see all the things I mentioned before, like the partnership with the Brazilian Olympic Committee, or let's say ADA being on the new NASDAQ and CME Group Index futures. I didn't see all this back then in 2021. Yet back in 2021, ADA was at around $3. As of right now, we're around 17 cents. So we're over 15 times lower than its all-time high, but yet we're around, I would arguably say, 5 times better at least in terms of the pure fundamentals. Now, Cardano didn't change too much, but ever since 2021 up until right now, so basically around 5 years, it's improved by quite a lot. So I get it. When it comes to Cardano, it may seem kind of bad, people like to say, but that's just if we take a look at the price charts. But also, it's not even really that bad because it depends how you take a look at it, right? It depends on the frame of mind. Now, I'm not telling anyone to do anything here, but if I take a look at it, last year, ADA at certain points, it was hovering at around $1. Right now, it's around 17 cents. We're around 5 times, or should I say over 5 times lower than certain points back in 2025 and also back in 2024 as well. My perception is this. Some people like the dip, some people don't. It really depends. It's like, for instance, Warren Buffett, for the things that he does like, I'm pretty sure he likes the dip. But when it comes to maybe other individuals out there, maybe they don't like the dip. I can't tell anyone to do anything, and this is just personally my perspective and my opinion, but when it comes to the dip, because I feel like that's the point for me. If I'm looking to dollar cost average, naturally, I would want it to be as low as possible. It only makes sense. It's like, for instance, if I'm a real estate developer, would I preferably want to buy the plot of land or the building or whatever at the lowest possible price? Of course, right? I mean, it's not possible to always get it in the lowest price possible, I suppose. But if it happens to be low anyways, I don't know why anyone would complain. Imagine if a real estate developer was like, oh, I don't like that property because the price was too low. There's too much of a discount. I'm just going to choose this more expensive one, even though it's right beside each other. It doesn't really make sense, usually. When it comes to this space, I don't know why it works in kind of the opposite direction. In real life, people like discounts, right? But when it comes to this space, it doesn't really seem to operate that way. But you know what? It is what it is. I can't control anyone. But when I take a look at Cardano, again, we may be over 15 times lower than its all-time high when it comes to ADA, but I think it's actually over 5 times better. I don't think it's like over 15 times better, no. I just think it's like around 5 times better maybe when compared to 2021, but it's still a major improvement in terms of the pure fundamentals. Not in terms of the price charts, but if anything, again, I don't mind low prices because I want it to be as low as possible, hypothetically, for dollar cost averaging purposes. Even though, again, I'm not telling anyone to do anything. Now, we have to consider as well, people like to say that Cardano can't really have good adoption because they say that this is too boring of a blockchain. It doesn't have a specialization. But sometimes that boring vibe when it comes to Cardano, it happens to be a positive for some enterprises out there because sometimes these enterprises, they may want to be focused on agriculture and then maybe the other thing they want to be focused on is real estate, or maybe they want to be focused on food. We just don't know. And something like Cardano, which doesn't have a very specialization, I would say, or a very unique one, it allows for a layer 1 blockchain that is able to do a lot of things. Like, for instance, maybe in the case of AI, in the case of agriculture, like what we've seen in the past, Cardano affecting over 10,000 farms. Not to mention, we've seen the impact that Cardano could very well be making in the case of sports, right? Through its partnership with the Brazilian Olympic Committee. So Cardano is this multifaceted sort of layer 1 blockchain, in my opinion. It's not super specialized in just one area. We see some other layer 1 blockchains out there. People primarily know them sometimes for memes. Other layer 1 blockchains out there, maybe they're known for video games. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but why box themselves in? When it comes to Cardano, it may be boring, but it has many tools in the toolbox, if that kind of makes sense. At least that's my analogy. And if I take a look at it as well, when it comes to ADA, an almost 3% recovery in the past 24 hours, really nothing that special, but I think if anything, if ADA is still below 20 cents, I'm not going to complain. Because here's the thing. If let's say maybe ADA one day could maybe go back to $1. It doesn't mean it will go back to $1, but I'm saying maybe if, hypothetically, in a make-believe scenario, if it ever even does, would it really matter what price I got ADA at when it comes to below 30 cents? Not necessarily. The reason why is because let's say $1 cost average at around 30 cents, and then maybe at around 20 cents, and then maybe at around 12 cents or 15 cents or 17 cents or whatever. If that is the case, it doesn't really matter if, let's say, maybe ADA could go back to $1, because even at the worst case scenario, like in the upper band, so to speak, right, at 30 cents is still over 3 times lower than $1. So whether it's at 30 cents, 20 cents, 15 cents, it may feel like a very big difference as of right now, but if ADA could maybe just even, let's say, hypothetically go back to $1, I don't think I'd really care at one point I acquired ADA at when it comes to below 30 cents. But that's just my perspective. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. But also on top of that, if I take a look at Cardano, it's fast, arguably, it's scalable, and the gas fees are also arguably not such a big issue. And those right there are the 3 key traits that not only the retail market cares about when it comes to a layer 1 blockchain, but also enterprises care about that too. So I think that when it comes to Cardano, it can have a use case when it comes to the retail side of things, but also when it comes to the enterprise side of things too. Because unlike some other layer 1 blockchains out there that, sure, they may be fast, they may be scalable, but then the gas fees are an issue. Or then maybe in the complete opposite of that, maybe the gas fees are not an issue, but then the speed and the scalability is kind of a big problem. So there's always this dilemma sometimes when I see some other layer 1 blockchains out there. But when it comes to Cardano, it may not have a specialization. It may not be the best in all categories, but it's pretty evenly, I guess, distributed, right? Its strengths, where it has decent scalability, where it has decent speed, where the gas fees are not an issue. So it may not be the most cool or interesting, but then it's the most well-rounded, in my opinion. And if we take a look at it in like the UFC or something like that, people want to see that the athlete is well-rounded, right? Maybe they know wrestling, maybe they know boxing, maybe they know jiu-jitsu, something like that. So it's just kind of like this space as well. I think that when it comes to Cardano, again, it may not be the coolest, but I think it's the most well-rounded, arguably, or one of the most. That is just my perspective, even though I am not telling anyone to do anything. But again, seeing ADA at around 17 cents and being over 5 times lower than $1, I have zero complaints, because if I walked inside a store in real life, I wouldn't complain about a discount. That's just my mindset, arguably. But yeah, I'll be sure to make more updates moving forward. So I want to say thank you so much for watching.